What happens when an NFL team drafts a quarterback with superstar potential and then locks him away like a prisoner? That's the bizarre, almost unbelievable situation playing out right now in Cleveland, and it has the entire league talking. The Browns didn't just draft any quarterback. They drafted Shedeur Sanders, the son of NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, one of the most electrifying athletes in history, and a player many scouts believed could go in the first round. And yet, instead of being developed, mentored, and given a path to the starting job, Shedeur is buried on the depth chart as QB3, not playing, not developing, and not even running the scout team. This isn't just a football story. It's a drama, a power struggle, and maybe even a cautionary tale about how NFL teams can mismanage young talent. Reports from inside the locker room paint a picture of a team in chaos. Players are reportedly furious, insiders are leaking information daily, and fans are split right down the middle. Is Shedeur being unfairly sabotaged? Or is there something the Browns know that we do? Think about this for a second. You spend years building your career, working on your craft, doing everything right, only to have the very organization that drafted you treat you like a problem to be hidden, rather than a solution to be unleashed. That's what's so compelling about this story. Shedeur Sanders isn't just sitting on the bench. According to multiple reports, he's not even being given the basic reps needed to grow. And when you combine that with reports that the Browns' front office is already scouting for next year's quarterback class, it starts to look less like a developmental plan and more like a cover-up. And the locker room? Oh, it's not staying quiet. The safe space that every football team relies on, the locker room, is leaking like a broken faucet. Insiders are getting quotes from players who say they've had enough, that they want to see Shedeur get a real shot. That's rare in the NFL, where players usually keep things in-house. For this much information to be coming out, you know the frustration is reaching a boiling point. So here's the big question. Why would a franchise go out of its way to hold back a player with this much upside? Is it ego from the coaching staff? Fear that if he plays well, it will expose their mistakes with the starter? Or is this a calculated move to crush Shedeur's confidence so that if he leaves Cleveland, other teams won't see him as a threat? Whatever the reason, this is one of the most explosive storylines in the NFL right now, and we're only scratching the surface. Buckle up, because the war between Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns isn't just heating up, it's about to blow wide open. Shedeur Sanders isn't just another young quarterback trying to make it in the NFL. He's one of the most talked about prospects of the last few years, and the son of a football legend. Born on February 7, 2002, Shedeur grew up surrounded by the game. His father, Deion "Primetime" Sanders, is an NFL Hall of Famer, one of the most electrifying players to ever step on a field, and now the head coach at the University of Colorado. That meant Shedeur's football education started early, and he didn't just inherit his dad's name. He inherited the work ethic, the charisma, and the swagger that comes with being a Sanders. Before reaching the NFL, Shedeur made his mark first at Jackson State University, where he absolutely dominated. Under his father's leadership, he became the face of HBCU football, winning the Jerry Rice Award as the top freshman in the FCS and leading JSU to back-to-back SWAC championships. He was calm under pressure, surgical as a passer, and displayed leadership qualities well beyond his years. Scouts loved his poise, accuracy, and ability to read defenses, traits that translate directly to the NFL level. Then came the move that put Shedeur in the national spotlight, following Deion Sanders to the University of Colorado in 2023. There, Shedeur showed he could shine against Power 5 competition. In his very first game for the Buffaloes, he threw for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns against TCU, shocking the college football world and silencing doubters who questioned if he could perform at that level. Throughout that season, he displayed NFL-caliber traits: quick release, mobility in the pocket, pinpoint accuracy, and mental toughness despite taking an absurd number of hits behind a struggling offensive line. When draft season rolled around, Shedeur was projected as a potential first- or second-round pick in early mocks. Analysts praised his football IQ, leadership, and ability to extend plays while keeping his eyes downfield. But for reasons that remain controversial, ranging from draft politics to narrative shifts. His stock slid on draft day, and he ultimately landed with the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round. That's where things got interesting. Shedeur now finds himself in a unique situation. A high-upside rookie quarterback with first-round talent who isn't being treated like a typical franchise QB investment. Despite being on the active roster, he's stuck as QB3, not running the scout team, not getting meaningful reps, and barely being developed. This has sparked controversy, both among Browns fans and across NFL media, with many believing he's being held hostage on the bench. But if there's one thing we know about Shedeur Sanders, it's that he thrives under pressure. He's calm, focused, and driven to prove doubters wrong. Whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else, Shedeur's story is far from over, and it might just be one of the most dramatic redemption arcs we've seen in football. Shedeur Sanders' path to the NFL was supposed to be the culmination of everything he had worked for since he first picked up a football. After lighting up defenses at Jackson State, and then proving himself at Colorado, analysts and scouts had him projected anywhere from a late first-round to early second-round pick heading into the draft cycle. His tape spoke for itself: quick release, NFL-level accuracy, the ability to diagnose coverages pre-snap, and the kind of calm pocket presence you normally see in seasoned veterans. Teams desperate for a franchise quarterback were rumored to have him near the top of their boards, and many expected Shedeur to be off the board early. But then something strange happened. As draft day got closer, the narrative around Shedeur began to shift. Suddenly, anonymous scouts were questioning his arm strength, nitpicking his mechanics, and even bringing up off-field concerns that had never been an issue during his college career. Some analysts pointed out that this wasn't unusual. Draft season can often turn into a smear campaign, where prospects get overscouted, until their strengths get overshadowed by manufactured weaknesses. By the time draft weekend arrived, the buzz surrounding Shedeur had cooled. The top quarterbacks came off the board quickly, names like Caleb Williams, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy, while Shedeur sat and waited. Round after round passed, and with each pick, the camera didn't cut to Shedeur, but the questions started flooding social media. How could a quarterback with this much production, this much pedigree, and this much talent be sliding this far? When the Cleveland Browns finally selected him in the 5th round, it felt like highway robbery. On one hand, Browns fans were ecstatic. They had just landed a player with starter potential at an absolute bargain. On the other hand, some wondered if Cleveland was really the right place for him to develop. After all, this is the same franchise that has burned through dozens of quarterbacks in the last 2 decades and is notorious for mishandling young signal callers. Still, the initial expectation was that Shedeur would at least get a chance to compete. Maybe he wouldn't start right away. Most 5th-round picks don't. But surely he'd get scout team reps, preseason snaps, and some meaningful development time. Analysts assumed Cleveland would treat him like a potential gem, slowly polishing him into a future starter while veteran QBs held things down. Instead, the opposite has happened. Despite being a premium value pick, Shedeur hasn't gotten those developmental opportunities. He isn't running the scout team, he's barely getting meaningful practice reps, and he's been glued to the 3rd-string role as if he's an afterthought. It's left many wondering, did Cleveland draft Shedeur Sanders because they believed in his future, or because they wanted to keep him from going somewhere else? If you want to understand why this story has become so explosive, you have to look at what's actually happening on the ground in Cleveland right now. On paper, Shedeur Sanders should be in one of the best positions a rookie quarterback could ask for: a talented roster, a strong defense, and veterans to learn from. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that the situation is far from ideal. In fact, it's downright toxic. Let's start with the depth chart. Shedeur is listed as QB3, which in itself isn't shocking for a rookie. Plenty of young quarterbacks sit behind veterans their first year. The difference here is that Shedeur isn't just waiting his turn, he's barely involved at all. Multiple insiders have reported that he's not even running the scout team during practice, meaning he isn't getting the reps that even a backup quarterback usually gets. Instead, those valuable snaps are going to other players, leaving Shedeur standing on the sideline watching, day after day. For a young quarterback, development is all about repetition, the muscle memory of running plays, reading defenses, and adjusting under pressure. Without those reps, you don't grow. And right now, Cleveland isn't letting him grow. Then there's the coaching staff's messaging. Publicly, head coach Kevin Stefanski says the right things, that they're committed to developing all their rookies and that Shedeur is part of the process. But actions speak louder than words, and the actions suggest something very different. When pressed by reporters, Browns insiders like Tony Rizzo have questioned why Shedeur is even on the roster if he's not being developed. Rizzo's blunt assessment: that history shows Cleveland probably isn't developing him at all, sent shockwaves through local sports media and fueled speculation that the Browns have already given up on Shedeur before he's had a chance to prove himself. The locker room dynamic is another major factor. According to multiple reports, players are frustrated. Some have gone so far as to leak information to the media, a rare move that signals serious internal unrest. These players reportedly want Shedeur to get meaningful snaps, not just garbage time and blowouts, but actual first-team reps in practice. Their argument is simple. You don't draft a quarterback with this much talent just to let him rot on the bench. And to make matters worse, the Browns' front office has been spotted scouting college quarterbacks for next year's draft. Imagine how that looks to players who believe Shedeur could be the future. Instead of pouring resources into developing the talent they already have, Cleveland appears to be window shopping for his replacement. Put all this together, and you get a picture of an organization that seems paralyzed, afraid to play Shedeur, afraid to lose him, and unwilling to commit to a clear path forward. And that uncertainty is creating a storm inside the building that's now spilling out into the public eye. If you thought the situation in Cleveland was just about depth charts and practice reps, think again. This thing has exploded into full-blown drama, and it's spilling out of the building in ways we almost never see in the NFL. The locker room, usually the most protected space in a football organization, is now ground zero for leaks, whispers, and frustration. Players are reportedly furious about how Shedeur Sanders is being treated, and they aren't just venting behind closed doors anymore. Multiple insiders say players have been leaking details to the media, essentially calling out their own coaching staff and front office. That's almost unheard of. NFL locker rooms usually operate on a strict code of silence when it comes to in-house problems. For guys to risk their reputations, and in some cases their jobs, by speaking out tells you just how bad things have gone. Some of the reports coming out paint a picture of a divided team, one group still trying to keep the peace and another group openly pushing for Shedeur to get a real opportunity. And that division is starting to make headlines. Every day seems to bring a new source or team insider dropping bombshells on Cleveland talk radio. One day it's about players begging for Shedeur to get first-team snaps. The next day it's about growing distrust between the locker room and head coach Kevin Stefanski. And then there's the media. Local sports radio and national analysts have started to pick sides, and it's turned into a battle of narratives. On one side, you have media personalities defending the Browns' slow play approach, saying Shedeur needs to be patient, learn, and earn his reps. On the other side, you have voices saying Cleveland is sabotaging a young player's career, either out of fear that he'll embarrass their current starter or because they never wanted him in the first place. One of the flashpoints came when a Cleveland radio host criticized Shedeur's sideline demeanor during games. Instead of praising him for consoling a teammate after a missed kick, which many considered a clear display of leadership, the host accused him of doing it for the cameras. This turned into a national story, with fans and analysts outside of Cleveland coming to Shedeur's defense. The idea that a rookie QB can't even comfort a teammate without having his motives questioned struck many as absurd, and fueled the narrative that Cleveland is trying to tear him down. All of this has put Kevin Stefanski and the Browns front office in a very uncomfortable position. They can't keep ignoring the noise forever. The more leaks and media takes that come out, the more pressure builds for them to either play Shedeur or move him somewhere that will. And until they make that decision, every sideline shot, every press conference, and every rumor is going to be magnified. Now that we've laid out what's happening in Cleveland, the natural question is, why? Why would any NFL franchise take a quarterback with Shedeur Sanders' talent, spend a draft pick on him, and then refuse to let him develop? Theories are flying everywhere, and honestly, some of them are hard to ignore. The first and most obvious theory is self-preservation. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and GM Andrew Berry have tied their futures to the current starting quarterback room, which includes a massive financial commitment to Deshaun Watson. If Shedeur were to come in, light it up, and look like the best quarterback on the roster, it would be an organizational nightmare. It would put the front office in a position where they'd have to either bench their $230 million man or admit they made a massive mistake. Neither of those options is palatable for a regime trying to hold onto power. So, the theory goes, it's easier to just keep Shedeur buried and avoid that uncomfortable situation entirely. Another motive could be control. By keeping Shedeur off the field and limiting his reps, the Browns maintain total control over his narrative. If he never gets a real chance to play, they can always claim he wasn't ready or didn't show enough in practice. And when his rookie contract eventually runs out, They can let him walk with minimal backlash because the public never got to see what he could really do. It's a way of protecting their reputation while quietly moving on. There's also the theory of asset management. The Browns know Shedeur has talent. They know that if they put him on the practice squad, another team would snatch him up immediately. So, they keep him on the active roster to avoid losing him, but they don't give him meaningful reps because they don't want to create a quarterback controversy. It's a weird middle ground where they want to keep him, but don't want him to get too good too fast. Some people even suggest that this is about sending a message, not just to Shedeur, but to the entire locker room. By keeping a high-profile rookie in check, the Browns might be trying to assert authority and maintain a strict, no one is bigger than the team culture. But if that's the plan, it might be backfiring. Instead of uniting the locker room, it seems to be dividing it, with players now leaking their frustrations to the media. Whatever the true motive is, one thing is clear. This isn't normal. Most teams bend over backwards to develop a quarterback with first-round traits, even if he was drafted in the 5th. The fact that Cleveland is going out of its way to hold Shedeur back suggests something deeper is at play, and that's what makes this situation so fascinating and so troubling. If you think what's happening to Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland is unique, think again. The NFL is full of stories of young quarterbacks who were mismanaged, buried on depth charts, or thrown into bad situations that nearly ruined their careers. The difference is, most of those quarterbacks at least got the chance to prove themselves on the field before things went south. Shedeur hasn't even been given that shot, which makes his case all the more frustrating. Take Baker Mayfield, for example. Ironically, Baker's saga also played out in Cleveland. He was the #1 overall pick in 2018, brought in to be the franchise savior, and for a time it looked like he might be. But after injuries and organizational dysfunction, the Browns turned on him. The narrative flipped almost overnight, from Baker is our guy to Baker is a distraction. The team eventually moved on, trading him away, and now Baker is thriving in Tampa Bay. The Browns had a starting caliber quarterback all along. They just didn't want to admit it. Then there's Geno Smith, who spent nearly a decade being written off as a backup after a rough start with the Jets. For years, he bounced around the league, holding clipboards and running scout team drills, until he finally got his shot with the Seahawks, and he turned into a Pro Bowler. Geno is living proof that sometimes a player's early struggles, or lack of opportunity, say more about the organization than the player himself. Or consider Kurt Warner, who was famously stocking shelves in a grocery store before getting a shot with the Rams and becoming a Hall of Famer. Warner's story is a reminder that talent can be hidden, ignored, or overlooked until the right opportunity comes along and everything changes. Shedeur's situation is different in that his talent is widely recognized. He was projected as a first or second-round pick by many analysts, yet he's still being stashed away. That makes this feel less like a case of a player not being ready and more like a team actively choosing to suppress his rise. There's also a cautionary tale here in Jordan Love. Love spent 3 full seasons sitting behind Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, barely touching the field. While Love ultimately became a solid starter, the Packers were heavily criticized for letting a first-round quarterback sit for so long. And unlike Shedeur, Love was at least getting scout team reps and preseason action. These examples all point to one thing: development matters. Some quarterbacks can survive rocky starts and poor situations, but many have their careers permanently altered by how their first few seasons are handled. Shedeur Sanders has the tools to be great, but if Cleveland continues to mismanage him, we could be looking at another what-if story instead of the next great NFL quarterback. What happens next in Cleveland could shape not only Shedeur Sanders' career, but also the entire direction of the Browns organization. Right now, the Browns are playing a very dangerous game, one that risks alienating their locker room, frustrating their fan base, and potentially wasting one of the most promising quarterback prospects of this generation. The first big implication is locker room chemistry. When players start leaking information and going to the media, it usually means trust between the team and coaching staff is breaking down. If Cleveland doesn't get this situation under control soon, they risk losing the room entirely. That means fractured leadership, lack of buy-in, and a potential midseason collapse, something no team with playoff aspirations can afford. There's also the public relations nightmare to consider. Fans are already starting to pick sides, and social media is filled with debates about whether Shedeur should get a shot. If the Browns keep him benched while the team struggles, pressure will only build. The last thing Cleveland wants is a stadium full of fans chanting Shedeur's name while Deshaun Watson struggles on the field. That's how full-on quarterback controversies are born. And once that happens, it's nearly impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. From a football perspective, the longer Shedeur sits, the harder it will be for him to develop at the pace he needs. Quarterbacks learn fastest by playing real games, making real mistakes, and seeing real defenses. Sitting behind the starter may protect his confidence, but it also risks stagnation. If Cleveland continues to delay his development, we could be looking at a scenario where Shedeur is eventually traded to another team and thrives there, leaving Browns fans wondering what might have been. My prediction? Something has to give by midseason. Either Shedeur starts getting meaningful reps in practice and eventually sees live game action, or this situation will spiral into a full-blown distraction. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are under immense pressure to win now, and if they don't, their jobs could be on the line. That might actually work in Shedeur's favor. A desperate coaching staff might finally roll the dice on the rookie to spark the team. Long-term, I wouldn't be surprised if Shedeur becomes the face of an NFL franchise, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else. His talent is too rare, his work ethic too strong, and his name too big to keep buried forever. If Cleveland doesn't recognize that soon, they risk becoming the team that let a superstar slip through their fingers. One way or another, this story is just getting started. The next few weeks could define the future, not just for Shedeur Sanders, but for the Browns organization as a whole.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.